The tray struck the tile just as Daniel Ruiz reached the kitchen pass. 3 porcelain cups broke beneath a wash of hot tea. A folded paper crane slid through the opening toward the spill, and Daniel caught it with 2 wet fingers before the brown edge of the puddle reached its wings. "Leave it, Daniel." Owen Mercer's voice came from the private dining room. The general manager stood beside Grace Bennett, smiling for their most important guest while his eyes warned Daniel to disappear. Daniel set the crane beside the only unbroken cup. One wing had bent under his thumb. He straightened the crease carefully. "Our dishwasher repairs birds now," Owen said. "Maybe he can fix the rest of the evening while he's out here." Grace gave Owen a quick look, but he was already turning the remark into a laugh. 2 servers smiled because they did not know what else to do. At the grill, Daniel's daughter Tessa kept her eyes on the fish in her pan. Masato Kuroda did not laugh. The 69-year-old billionaire founder of Kuroda Hospitality had folded the crane from his place card while Owen presented plans for the Hawthorne Room. His company was considering an agreement that could keep the restaurant inside the old Cleveland Hotel for another decade. Mr. Kuroda looked past Owen toward the kitchen. Then he asked a question in Japanese. Owen's smile tightened. He knew enough rehearsed business Japanese to follow the question, but Daniel could see him searching for the safest answer. "Mr. Kuroda says the kitchen is very efficient," Owen told Grace. "He's impressed by how much the staff accomplishes." That was not what Mr. Kuroda had said. He had asked why the people in the kitchen looked afraid, and whether fear was part of the labor savings Owen had praised. "Back to the sink," Owen told Daniel. Mr. Kuroda didn't fly across the country for a lesson from the dishroom diplomat. Tessa's shoulders drew tight. Earlier that afternoon, Owen had warned the staff that anyone who disrupted the dinner might not find a shift beside their name next week. Daniel could return to the sink. He could finish the sanitation list Owen expected him to complete after clocking out. He could let Owen's version settle over the table as if it were true. Instead, Daniel answered Mr. Kuroda in Japanese. "They're afraid because their hours disappear when they ask questions. The numbers look low because some of the work happens after we clock out." The room went still. Mr. Kuroda's attention sharpened. Grace looked from Daniel to Owen. Even the grill seemed quieter, though the oil continued snapping beneath Tessa's fish. Owen stared at Daniel as if a chair had spoken. Mr. Kuroda replied in Japanese. "How long have you understood us?" "From the first greeting." Owen stepped between them. "That's enough." Daniel placed the repaired crane beside Mr. Kuroda's cup. Owen took Daniel by the elbow and guided him into the service corridor with a grip that remained polite only because people were watching. Grace and Tessa followed. "You will go back in there," Owen said, releasing him, "and explain that you misunderstood." "I didn't." "Then explain that you were speaking only about yourself." Daniel looked at Tessa. Her face held anger, fear, and a question he could not answer without disappointing her. "It isn't only me," he said. Owen lowered his voice. "One apology and this ends." Daniel thought of the closing slips in his apron pocket. On paper his shift ended at 10:30. Every night there were racks, drains and sanitation checks still waiting at 10:30. He turned to Grace. "My name is Daniel Ruiz. If Mr. Kuroda wants the source, use my name. People are being told to clock out and keep working." Grace's lips parted, but Owen answered first. "Go home, Daniel." Tessa flinched. Daniel removed his wet apron. Once he handed it to Owen, returning to the sink would no longer be an easy retreat. He folded the apron, placed it on a service cart, and walked out through the loading entrance. In his shirt pocket, where there had been nothing a moment before, he found the paper crane. Mr. Kuroda had given it back. Tessa caught Daniel at the bus stop before the next bus arrived. She still wore her cook's coat. One sleeve was marked with sauce, and her hair was trapped beneath the cap she hated. "Do you know what he's doing in there?" she asked. "He's telling everyone you planned it." Daniel watched cars move through the wet intersection. "I didn't." "That won't matter if he controls the story." "Grace heard me." "Grace heard you blow up the dinner that's supposed to save her restaurant." Daniel turned toward her. "Do you think I should have lied?" "I think you should have thought past the next 10 seconds. The answer hurt because it was not wrong. Tessa had helped him get the dishwashing job 11 months earlier, after his savings narrowed to a few weeks and his applications disappeared into online forms. She had asked him for one thing: do not make her responsible for whatever happened next. "You never told me you spoke Japanese like that," she said. "It didn't matter. It mattered tonight." The bus appeared at the far corner. Daniel slipped a hand into his pocket and felt the crane's paper edge. "If I had told you," he said, "would Owen have treated me differently?" "This isn't about Owen. It's always about the person who gets to decide what you're worth." Tessa stepped back. "That's exactly the kind of sentence you use when you don't want to answer." The bus opened its doors. Daniel climbed aboard alone. He sat near the back and unfolded the paper crane beneath the yellow ceiling light. The place card carried Mr. Kuroda's name on one side and the Hawthorne Room's faded green crest on the other. Daniel had seen that tight fold hundreds of times in Kobe hotel lobbies, usually made by children waiting for parents who worked too late. For years, Japanese had been the language in which Daniel solved problems for other people. Missed trains, medical calls, angry guests, frightened new employees. Back in Cleveland, he had stopped placing it on applications because every interviewer asked why a man with his experience had spent so long out of management. Eventually, he stopped offering the part of the answer they did not want. He repaired the wing again and put the crane on his kitchen table when he reached home. It looked out of place beside a past-due electricity notice. Grace called at 7 the next morning. By 8, Daniel sat in the restaurant office facing Owen across a desk crowded with supplier invoices. Grace stood beside the window, holding a mug she had forgotten to drink. Owen looked rested. Daniel knew that meant he had not gone home. "No one was forced to work unpaid," Owen said. "Closing times are targets. If someone takes longer because he's slow, that isn't a wage policy." Daniel reached into his jacket and removed the duplicate checklist from the night before. Owen's initials appeared beside the sanitation tasks. The final mark was timed 11 minutes after Daniel's shift ended. "You signed this," Daniel said. "I signed that the work was done. After I clocked out. You chose to finish." Grace finally set down her mug. "How often does this happen?" "Ask for the last 2 months of closing slips." Owen leaned back. "Those slips show tasks, not labor violations. If this is what delays the agreement, we may not have enough cash to make the next full payroll." "Has Daniel explained that part?" Daniel looked at Grace. The skin beneath her eyes seemed thinner than it had the night before. Owen had kept the Hawthorne Room alive through a boiler failure, a supplier walkout, and the year Grace's husband died. He could make a crisis sound like proof that every later decision belonged to him. "Friday's operational walkthrough is still scheduled," Grace said. "Mr. Kuroda's team will make its recommendation after that." Owen turned to her. "You're giving this 5 days?" "I'm giving myself 5 days." Then she faced Daniel. "One disputed slip won't stop an agreement. If there's a pattern, bring me something I can verify. Don't pressure the staff. Don't turn my kitchen into a battlefield." Daniel folded the slip along its existing crease. "Understood." Grace stopped him before he reached the door. "Owen isn't wrong about the money," she said. "I have 6 weeks of room if every forecast is right. Less if they aren't. Then you need the forecast to be honest." "I need both things, Daniel. Honesty and a restaurant that survives it." He nodded. That was the first sentence anyone had spoken that morning that did not ask him to choose one and pretend the other did not exist. Owen followed him into the empty dining room. Morning light made the white tablecloths look gray. At Mr. Kuroda's place, the cup had been removed. A faint ring remained on the cloth. "You embarrassed Grace," Owen said. "You frightened the staff you claimed to defend, and you gave an investor a reason to believe this place is badly managed." "Is it?" "It's open." Owen took an envelope from his jacket. Inside was a written statement. It said Daniel had misunderstood a private conversation in a language he had not used professionally for many years. It described the off-clock work as voluntary and blamed the dinner interruption on stress. Beneath it was an offer of 4 weeks' pay and a neutral reference. "Sign it," Owen said. "You walk away with time to find something better." Tessa keeps her position. Grace keeps her deal. Daniel read the last line twice. It did not promise Tessa would keep her position. It merely placed her close enough to the threat that Daniel would hear it. What happens to everyone else? Everyone else keeps working. For free. Owen's face changed, not into anger but disappointment. You think a restaurant survives because every minute is comfortable? Daniel returned the statement. I think if the work is necessary, the minutes are necessary too. Then you'll have no shifts until this is reviewed. Daniel felt the number in his bank account as plainly as if it had been printed on the wall. He could still take the envelope. He could tell Tessa he had secured a month. He could let Friday arrive without him. Instead, he placed the envelope on the nearest table. By Friday, he said, I'll show Grace what a normal close actually costs. Owen glanced at the envelope but did not pick it up. You won't make it to Friday. At 2 that afternoon, Daniel waited beside the loading dock where the cooks took their shortest breaks. He had written dates on 5 index cards. He did not ask anyone to make an accusation. He asked only what time they had clocked out and what task they had completed last. The first cook looked toward the steel door before answering. I don't remember. The porter remembered but would not let Daniel write it down. A prep worker said her ride was waiting and left half a sandwich on the bench. No one called Daniel a liar. That made the silence worse. An older server waited until the others had gone, then told Daniel she had spent 19 minutes rolling silverware after clock out on Saturday. Can I write that? She looked through the small window in the loading door. Not with my name. Grace needs something she can verify. Grace won't make my car payment when Owen cuts Tuesday. Daniel lowered the card. I'm sorry, she said. You don't owe me an apology. But he understood what her refusal meant. Owen did not need every worker to defend him. He needed each worker to believe the others would stay silent. Tessa came through the door carrying a trash bag. Grace said not to pressure people. I'm asking about hours. From people whose hours Owen controls. Daniel put the cards away. Then tell me how to ask. You don't. You know what happens. Knowing and proving aren't the same. That sounds like Owen. Tessa dropped the bag into the bin harder than necessary. No. It sounds like someone who still has to work here after you leave. She went back inside. Daniel waited until the break ended, then entered through the loading door. Grace had not barred him from the building, and his name remained on the employee roster even if Owen had removed his shifts. The dish room smelled of detergent and damp cardboard. Above the utility sink, closing slips were clipped to a board for 30 days before Owen moved them to the office. The newest pages were gone. Daniel checked the dry storage shelf. Months earlier, after Owen questioned whether Daniel had completed a drain check, Daniel had begun keeping the yellow duplicate from every closing slip he signed. He found 23 copies in the bottom of a tea carton. They did not prove when he clocked out, but he remembered enough dates to see the pattern. On nights when Owen cut the dish shift by 30 minutes, the same sanitation tasks remained. Owen's initials still appeared beside them. Tessa stood in the doorway. You can't be back here. Daniel held up the slips. These are mine. Her phone buzzed in her coat. She looked at the screen and silenced it. Was that Owen? It was the shift group. What did he say? Nothing. Tessa. She closed the door behind her, then opened the message. Clock out at posted time. Finish assigned close before leaving. No unauthorized overtime. Below it, 3 people had answered with a thumbs up. Daniel read it again. How many of these? Enough. Send them to Grace. And when Owen says he meant people should finish faster? Then we show the slips. And when he says you took those after you were removed from the schedule? Daniel lowered the papers. Tessa's voice softened. You keep acting like the truth walks into a room by itself. It doesn't. People carry it and people can get hurt. He wanted to tell her she sounded afraid. Instead he asked, will you send me the messages? She sent 6 screenshots. Each message followed the same pattern. Owen named a clock-out time, listed duties that could not begin until the last guests left, and prohibited unauthorized overtime. Once, Tessa had replied that the fryer would still be hot at the posted time. Owen had answered, then managed the close. Nothing in the messages said work for free. Nothing needed to. The choice was built into the space between the command to clock out and the command to finish. That's all I'm giving you without talking to the others. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Daniel should have taken the slips home. He should have copied every page, asked permission before using Tessa's messages, and waited until he had people willing to stand beside the records. Instead, he walked to Owen's office. Owen was studying a spreadsheet with columns of labor percentages. He looked at the slips in Daniel's hand and sighed. Grace gave you 5 days, Daniel said. Use them. Correct the labor number before Friday. Owen closed the laptop. What exactly do you think those prove? That you assigned work after shifts ended. They prove that work was completed. Daniel placed one slip on the desk. Tessa has the messages. Owen did not touch the paper. Does she know you're using her name? Daniel felt the mistake as soon as the words left him. She knows what you wrote. And who else have you recruited? No one is being recruited. Good. Because asking employees to coordinate a disruption during an acquisition review would be a serious matter. Daniel leaned forward. Correct the numbers. Owen stood. You want the honest number? The honest number says this restaurant closes in 3 months. The honest number sends Tessa back to piecing together 2 part-time jobs. I have spent 6 years cutting everything I can cut without locking the doors. You cut minutes that people still work. I set expectations. You hide the cost. For an instant, Owen looked tired enough to admit it. Then he picked up Daniel's slip. You were told not to pressure staff or interfere with operations. Effective now, you're suspended pending conduct review. You may collect personal property with a manager present. Grace didn't say that. Grace delegated personnel decisions to me. Owen opened the office door. Tessa stood on the other side. Her eyes moved from Daniel to the slip in Owen's hand. Owen spoke gently. Your father says you have messages he intends to use against the restaurant. Daniel tried to answer, but Tessa's expression stopped him. He had promised not to make her responsible for whatever followed. In less than a day he had handed Owen her name. Owen returned the yellow slip to Daniel as if returning a receipt. A manager will walk you to the employee area. Daniel gathered his jacket and the small canvas bag where he kept spare socks. At the dish station, 2 workers found reasons to face away. The server who had spoken to him by the loading dock carried a rack of glasses past without looking up. Tessa followed as far as the kitchen pass. I told you not yet, she said. I thought if he knew we could prove it. You thought he would surrender because you were right. Daniel put on his jacket. What did he offer you? He asked. Tessa's face closed. That has nothing to do with this. Before he could ask again, she returned to the line. Owen was waiting there with the evening assignments, already speaking to her as if Daniel had left the building. Grace called Daniel the next morning and asked him to come through the hotel lobby instead of the restaurant. Mr. Kuroda was waiting in her office with a thin folder on his lap. No attorneys surrounded him. No assistants carried miraculous records. There was only Grace, one empty chair, and the hum of the old window unit. Daniel remained near the door. Please sit, Grace said. Mr. Kuroda spoke in English. I asked for you because I want to know whether Mr. Mercer misunderstood me or chose not to understand. Daniel sat. Mr. Kuroda opened the folder. The first page contained 2 columns, one English and one Japanese. It was a summary Owen had submitted before the dinner. Staff concerns have been addressed through direct management communication. All closing duties are performed within compensated shifts. The existing workforce supports the transition plan. Daniel read the Japanese column. The sentences were formal and careful. Owen might not have written the translation himself, but he had approved every promise. This is what you were asking about last night? Daniel said. Partly. You saw people watching Owen before they answered. Mr. Kuroda nodded. Numbers can be reviewed later. Fear is easiest to see before someone explains it away. Grace gripped the handle of her mug. Owen told me there were complaints about scheduling. He said they had been resolved. They were stopped, Daniel said. That isn't the same. Mr. Kuroda studied him. Can you prove the second sentence is false? Daniel placed copies of Tessa's 6 messages beside the folder. He did not mention her name. Then he laid down 3 closing slips. These show a pattern, he said. Not the whole one. And the original records? Owen controls them. Grace read the messages. He'll say people should complete the duties before clocking out. Some of the duties can't start until the last table leaves. Mr. Kuroda closed the folder. Then a normal operation should make that visible. Daniel heard the limit inside the sentence. Mr. Kuroda was not offering to believe him. He was asking for something the agreement could survive. Will you delay the decision? Daniel asked. The walkthrough remains Friday. My recommendation will follow what can be verified. Daniel's disappointment must have shown. Mr. Kuroda continued. A man speaking my language deserves courtesy. He does not automatically deserve control over everyone else's future. Daniel looked at the folder again. I'm not asking for control. Good. Then show the work. Mr. Kuroda switched to Japanese before Daniel rose. Where did you learn? Kobe. 15 years in hotels. And now the dish room. Daniel heard no insult in the observation, which made it harder to answer. Now the dish room. Good hospitality can be seen from both sides of a service door, Mr. Kuroda said. But experience is useful only when other people can test it. Daniel replied in English. Then Friday should be in English too. If anything is decided, the staff should understand it. Mr. Kuroda gave a slight nod. Agreed. When Daniel left the office, Owen was waiting in the closed bar. He stood behind the counter polishing a glass, though the glass was already clean. Grace told me about the meeting, he said. Daniel took the nearest stool but did not sit. Then correct the briefing. Owen placed the glass upside down. 6 years ago, Grace was paying produce invoices on one credit card and payroll on another. The boiler failed during the Christmas rush. I found a contractor who worked overnight because I promised him every private event for a year. I know. When her husband got sick, I opened this place at 6 in the morning and closed it at 1. I did not invoice Grace for the extra hours. That was your choice. It was commitment. Then you were free to give it. Owen's jaw tightened. That sentence is why you wash dishes. Daniel absorbed the blow. Owen seemed to regret it but not enough to take it back. You think I don't know what unpaid work costs? Owen asked. I know exactly. I also know what an empty dining room costs. I know what happens when a restaurant misses one payroll and every good employee starts applying somewhere else. So you make them afraid to apply now. I make the schedule fit reality. You make reality fit the spreadsheet. Why did you hide it? Because I knew you'd make it about Owen. It is about Owen. It's also about me being good at my job. I know you're good. Do you? You never ask how service went unless you need evidence. Daniel glanced toward the loading door. He is using you. Maybe. And you're using me too. The accusation stopped him. Tessa held up her phone. You wanted the messages so I gave them to you. Then you walked into his office and said my name. That was a mistake. It was a choice. I was trying to force him to fix it. Because people always surrender when Daniel Ruiz explains the truth correctly. He looked away. Tessa stepped closer. What happened in Japan? This isn't the time. It is exactly the time. You stand in front of everyone demanding they risk their jobs for the truth, but you won't tell your own daughter why a hotel man who speaks Japanese came home and spent years pretending none of it happened. I didn't pretend. You washed dishes for 11 months and let Owen call you slow. The work isn't shameful. I didn't say it was. Hiding is. Daniel looked at the role description in her hand. If you take that job, he'll say the kitchen agreed. And if I don't take it, will you tell me I saved everyone? Will that pay my rent? Some things cost too much. Easy to say when you're deciding what I should lose. Tessa folded the paper once more, making the crease sharp. I won't let Owen use my name in the presentation, she said. But I'm not joining whatever you plan next. Not until you stop treating people like pieces that should move because your cause is right. She returned to the kitchen. Daniel walked home carrying the notes Grace allowed him to keep. At his kitchen table, he unfolded the paper crane. One wing leaned lower than the other. He placed the closing slips in rows. Beside them, he wrote the actual order of a normal close. The last guests left. The line broke down. Hot equipment cooled enough to clean. Food was stored and dated. Trash moved to the loading dock. The dish machine completed its final cycle. The drains were cleared. The sanitation check was signed. Owen's schedule treated those events as if they could happen at the same time. They could not. Some tasks required earlier tasks to finish. Some required 2 people for safety. No speech could change that. Daniel calculated the missing time. On an average busy night, the restaurant needed 4 additional paid staff hours. Not 40. Not an amount that would instantly destroy the business. Then he considered Owen's strongest argument. If 4 hours were added every night, the current schedule would not meet the target. Daniel worked backward through the week. Closing 1 hour earlier on the 2 weakest nights would cover most of the difference. A smaller late menu would cover the rest. He checked his math 3 times. The plan would reduce a handful of reservations and servers would lose some late tips. Grace would not like it. Mr. Kuroda might decide the restaurant was too fragile for the larger agreement. An honest alternative could still cost people something. That did not make Owen's method honest. Daniel added the temporary workers Owen sometimes used before inspections. Their hours had to count too. If Owen brought them Friday, the dining room might look smoother, but the labor percentage would rise in front of the people he needed to impress. He had made calculations like these in Kobe when weather-canceled tour groups and hotel restaurants had to reduce service without abandoning standards. The skill had not vanished because he stopped naming it. But records and calculations still left Owen room to say the staff was slow. Daniel looked at Friday's walkthrough time. The answer was not to ask anyone to stop working. It was to ask them to follow Owen's written rules exactly. Complete the duties scheduled inside paid time. When the time ended, request authorization before working another minute. The staff would work normally, request paid time for additional duties, and let the unfinished tasks remain visible. If Owen approved the time, the labor number changed. If he refused, the required work remained where Grace and Mr. Kuroda could see it. Daniel wrote the plan on 1 page. At the bottom, he added a sentence he had avoided from the beginning. I was wrong to confront Owen before the people affected had agreed to stand with me. He signed his name. Daniel returned Thursday afternoon to collect the rest of his belongings. He used the loading entrance and waited outside as instructed. Owen arrived with Grace several minutes later, carrying Daniel's canvas bag and a white envelope. What is that? Daniel asked. Owen held out the envelope. Termination notice. Grace looked ill. I asked him to wait until Friday. And I reviewed the conduct, Owen said. Daniel entered employee areas after suspension, removed business records, pressured staff, and disrupted management during a pending transaction. The duplicates belong to the person who signs them. You were told to collect property with a manager present. Daniel looked at Grace. Are you firing me? She hesitated. That was answer enough for Owen. Personnel authority is delegated to the general manager, he said. The termination is effective today. Daniel read the page. Owen had checked insubordination and interference with operations. A blank line waited beneath acknowledgement of receipt. He signed his name and wrote, reason disputed. Then he added the time. Owen watched him. There is no benefit to making this uglier. Writing the time isn't ugly. You think every detail is a weapon. Only when someone wants it forgotten. Grace stepped forward. Daniel, I'm sorry. You can change it. She looked toward the restaurant door. Not before I know what changing it will cost. Daniel took the canvas bag. For 11 months, the Hawthorne room had been the line between him and borrowing money from Tessa. Now the line was gone. He walked away without arguing. At home, he placed the termination notice beside the electricity bill. Together, the 2 pages made the next month simple to understand. He would be short. Daniel opened his old laptop and began an unemployment claim. The form asked why he had been discharged. He typed insubordination, erased it, and entered dispute concerning unpaid closing assignments. Then he opened a job site. 3 hotel positions required recent management references. 2 restaurant jobs offered fewer hours than he had lost. A warehouse night shift began at the same time Tessa usually finished work, which meant they could no longer share the ride that saved her bus fare after late closes. He submitted 1 application and stopped. The cost of Owen's notice was not dramatic enough for anyone to arrive and save him. It was a row of smaller calculations, each one narrowing the next week. Near midnight someone knocked. Tessa entered carrying a paper bag of food. She saw the notice immediately. Grace let him do it? She didn't stop him. Tessa put the food in the refrigerator. I'll cover the electric bill. No. Don't start. I have enough for this month. And next month. Daniel sat at the kitchen table. The crane lay near his elbow. At some point he had closed his fist around it, crushing the lower wing. Tessa picked it up. This was on Mr. Kuroda's table. He gave it to me. Why? Maybe he thought I needed something small enough to protect. She tried to lift the crushed wing. The paper resisted. What happened in Japan? She asked again. Daniel did not look away this time. He told her about the Kobe hotel where he had worked in guest services and later helped train new staff. A supervisor had been assigning unpaid overnight preparation to contract workers before inspection days. Daniel confronted him in a lobby full of employees. The accusation was true. Daniel's preparation was not. He had no copies. The workers denied it when managers questioned them. One contract ended the next week, and fear finished what authority began. Daniel was not fired for reporting unpaid work. He was dismissed months later after every disagreement became proof that he could not be trusted with management. I came home when your grandfather got sick, he said. I told myself I'd go back into hotels after he recovered. He didn't. No. And you never went back. Daniel shook his head. Every application asked why I left. I had an answer that sounded like an excuse and a reference that said very little. Tessa smoothed the crane against the table. So you did the same thing with Owen? Yes. You confronted him before anyone was ready? Yes. And you used my name? Daniel's throat tightened. Yes. Tessa pressed the wing flat, then shaped it gently along the old fold. I'm still angry. You should be. That isn't an apology. I'm sorry. I wanted Owen to surrender before I had to ask anyone to trust me. I made you carry the risk. Tessa set the crane upright. One wing remained visibly creased, but it held. What are you going to do? Daniel slid the 1-page plan across the table. Ask. They met the next morning in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the hotel. Daniel placed the plan in front of Tessa and kept his hands around his cup. I want you to tell me why this won't work. She read it once without speaking. The dish machine can't stop a clock out if there's glass inside. Then the cycle finishes. Safety first. Owen will bring extra people. They go into the real labor count. He'll say we're deliberately moving slowly. Everyone works normally. No one delays anything. He'll ask someone to keep going as a favor. That person asks to be clocked back in. Tessa traced the final paragraph with 1 finger. You say no one has to sign. No one. And you won't use a name unless that person agrees. I won't. She folded the plan and put it in her bag. I'll ask 1 question, she said. Will they require paid time for every duty Owen assigns? That's all. That's enough. Maybe not. It has to be. Tessa stood. No, Dad. It has to be what people freely choose. Even if it isn't enough. Daniel nodded. What if no one says yes? Then I'll tell you. And Friday? You still tell the truth about your own hours. You don't get to spend everyone else's courage before they offer it. Daniel accepted the correction. She left for her shift carrying the plan. For the first time since the dinner, Daniel had given the truth to someone without trying to control where she carried it. Mr. Kuroda's assistant called before noon and asked Daniel to meet in the hotel lobby. Mr. Kuroda sat in the same chair as before. A document rested on the table between them. My company needs an interpreter for 2 weeks, he said. Cleveland first, then Chicago. The work is temporary but the rate is fair. Daniel read the first page. The amount was more than he would earn in 2 months at the dish station. Travel and a hotel room were included. Why me? Because you understand hospitality, not only vocabulary. Daniel imagined telling Tessa that losing his job had opened a better door. Owen would call it proof that Daniel had created the dispute for personal advancement. More importantly, the people still closing the kitchen would remain inside the same narrow choice. When would it start? Tonight. Daniel closed the document. I can't. Mr. Kuroda waited. If I leave now, this becomes a story about a dishwasher who impressed a rich man and escaped, Daniel said. That isn't what happened. The offer is work, not charity. I know. That's why it's difficult. You may not receive it again. I know that too. Mr. Kuroda took back the document without offense. Daniel placed his one-page plan on the table. Friday should proceed exactly as Owen scheduled it. Every employee works normally. When paid time ends, anyone given more work asks to be clocked back in. And if no one joins you? Then my records stand alone and you judge them alone. You are no longer an employee. Grace can invite me as the owner. Mr. Kuroda read the page. I will not instruct her to do so. I'm not asking you to. And the discussion remains in English. It has to. Mr. Kuroda handed the plan back. Then you understand what must happen next. Grace lived in a narrow brick house filled with framed menus from the Hawthorne Room's better years. Daniel sat at her dining table that afternoon. Between them lay the checklists, the shift messages Tessa had permitted him to use, the staffing calculation and the termination notice. Grace read the reduced hours proposal first. Closing early on Tuesday and Wednesday costs reservations. Fewer than pretending 4 staff hours don't exist. The hotel agreement expects 7-night service. Then the agreement needs a real 7-night labor budget. She looked at the termination notice. Owen had authority to issue this. You have authority to let me attend tomorrow. He'll say your presence turns the walkthrough into a performance. It already is one. He scheduled extra workers. Grace looked up. How do you know? Tessa saw the agency names. If he needs them, count them. If he doesn't, he can send them home paid. Grace walked to a framed opening night menu. In the photograph beside it, she and her husband were 30 years younger. Owen stood near the edge, a new assistant manager wearing a jacket too large for him. He saved this place more than once, she said. Then judge what he does now without erasing what he did before. Grace faced him. You make that sound easy. It isn't. That's why it belongs to you. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Grace took a sheet of her stationery and wrote that Daniel Ruiz was invited to attend the Friday operational walkthrough as her guest and former employee. She signed it and added the time. No disruption, she said. No speeches while guests are present. Safety comes first. Agreed. If the real numbers cannot support the restaurant, you don't get to blame the numbers. Agreed. Grace passed him the letter. I should have stopped the termination until Friday. Daniel folded the letter. You can decide what that means after tomorrow. This invitation does not reinstate you. I understand. It does not promise the agreement survives. I understand that too. Grace rested both hands on the table. Then what does it promise? That Owen can't keep every person in a separate room. She glanced at the records between them. I let him handle the rooms because he was good at surviving them, she said. After a while, I stopped entering. Tomorrow you enter. At 5 he met Tessa beside the loading dock. 8 workers were scheduled to close. 5 had agreed to request paid time for every assigned duty. 2 had declined. 1 had said he would decide when the moment came. Daniel did not ask for their names. One of the 2 who declined says we're risking the restaurant, Tessa said. He may be right about the risk. You're not angry? Fear doesn't become dishonest because it disagrees with me. The other 1 thinks Owen will find a reason to fire everyone next week. Daniel looked at the loading door. That's why Grace and Mr. Kuroda have to see the choice themselves. No one should be asked to trust what happens after a private meeting. Owen added 4 agency workers, Tessa said. He put 2 in dish and 2 on prep. Then 4 people's hours go into the cost. He changed clock-out times too. 15 minutes later. Those minutes go in. Tessa handed him copies of the shift messages. Each worker who had contributed one had written an initial beside it. No one had signed an accusation. Daniel added his own statement to the stack. It described the dinner, the off-clock assignments he had personally received, and his premature confrontation with Owen. He signed his full name. "Why include your mistake?" Tessa asked. "Because Owen will." The loading door opened. Owen stood on the other side. "You are not permitted on restaurant property." Daniel held out Grace's letter. Owen read it without taking it. "She's letting you stage this. She's letting me observe. And the staff. You can ask them." Owen looked past Daniel toward Tessa. "Your lead position is still available if you act like a leader tomorrow." Tessa met his eyes. "Then put every hour in the offer." Owen's face became still. He closed the door between them. Friday's walkthrough began at 7. The Hawthorne room looked perfect. Every table was filled. 4 temporary workers moved through the kitchen in clean black aprons. The dish station had 2 more people than Daniel had ever seen there on a Friday. Owen greeted Mr. Kuroda and Grace beside the private dining room. When Daniel approached, Owen blocked the doorway. "This is an operational review," he said. "Not an employee hearing." Grace showed him the invitation. "Daniel is here at my request." "Then any disruption is yours." "Any disruption will be visible," she said. Mr. Kuroda asked how many people were working. Owen gave the usual staff number and did not include the agency workers. Daniel spoke before Grace had to. 4 additional workers are here tonight." Owen turned. "Temporary support is standard during a walkthrough. Then their hours are part of what the walkthrough costs." Mr. Kuroda looked at his watch. "Include everyone." Owen made a note. Daniel did not know whether the number he wrote was honest. For the first time, that uncertainty did not control the plan. Service continued. Tessa worked the line at her usual pace. No one dragged a task. No one left a rack waiting to create a scene. Daniel stood beside Grace near the kitchen pass and marked only what he could personally observe. At 9:45, Owen sent 1 temporary worker home. At 10, the last dessert order entered the kitchen. At 10:15, the cooks began wrapping the cold station. The fryer was still above cleaning temperature. The dish machine held glassware from the private room. At 10:30, Owen approached the time clock. "Posted shift is over," he called. "Clock out and complete assigned close." Tessa wiped her hands and clocked out. 4 other workers followed. Then Tessa returned to the line and stood beside the hot fryer. "I need to be clocked back in to break this down," she said. Owen stared at her. "You had time." The last order left the fryer at 10:12. It wasn't safe to drain. At the dish station, a worker raised his hand. "The private room glasses need another cycle. Clock me back in?" The porter stood beside 2 full trash carts. "Loading dock is locked until 10:45. I need paid time if you want these moved tonight." No one shouted. No one walked out. They waited. Owen looked toward Mr. Kuroda, then toward the unfinished clothes. "This is coordinated insubordination." Daniel stepped forward. "They're asking permission to work. They are deliberately withholding assigned duties. Authorize the time. The schedule is closed. The work isn't." Owen turned to Grace. This is what he wanted. He told them to manufacture a failure. Tessa answered before Daniel could. "We worked the schedule you posted." Owen pointed toward the temporary staff. "Then they'll finish." Daniel looked at Mr. Kuroda. "Those hours count too." "Yes," Mr. Kuroda said. The answer left Owen with no invisible labor. He opened the timekeeping screen but did not enter the extensions. "You want honesty?" he said. "Here it is. Add every minute Daniel wants and the target fails. The agreement shrinks or disappears. Grace loses the hotel traffic. People lose more than 20 minutes. Grace looked at Daniel. "Is that true?" "The current target fails," Daniel said. Owen gave a short, bitter laugh. "There. Finally." Daniel placed the checklists and authorized messages on the stainless counter. These show the missing time was assigned before tonight. Tonight shows the work still exists when the time is counted. And your solution is what? Good intentions? Daniel unfolded his reduced hours page. Close 1 hour earlier on the 2 weakest nights. Reduce the late menu after 9. Keep the paid close. It does not preserve every reservation, but it preserves the work without hiding its cost. Owen glanced at the page. You think you understand this business because you washed its pans? Daniel felt every person waiting for his answer. He could humiliate Owen in Japanese, turning the language into a locked room that excluded the staff again. He answered in English. I understand the dish room because I worked there. I understand the schedule because I kept the slips. I understand hotels because I spent 15 years in them. And I understand my mistake because I confronted you alone and gave you the chance to frighten everyone separately. Owen's eyes moved toward Tessa. Daniel continued. No one here has to call you evil. You kept this restaurant open. Then you decided that gave you the right to choose which minutes belong to other people. Without the deal, this place may still close. Then let it be judged on the truth. Grace picked up the timekeeping tablet. She entered the extensions herself. Everyone finishing the close is paid, she said. Owen reached for the tablet. Grace moved it out of his hand. You no longer control the schedule while I review this. The words produced no applause. A fryer still needed cleaning. Glasses still waited in the machine. The staff looked tired, not victorious. Mr. Kuroda placed the acquisition folder beside Daniel's checklists. The recommendation is delayed, he said. An independent payroll and operations review will begin Monday. The agreement will be evaluated using the hours required, including tonight. Owen looked at Grace. A delay could kill it. I know, she said. For the first time, she did not let fear complete the decision for her. Daniel tied on a spare apron and joined the paid close. The review took 4 weeks. It found repeated closing assignments after scheduled clock-out times, inconsistent edits to labor records, and retaliation connected to Daniel's complaint. It did not call every extra minute theft. It did not declare every worker blameless. It found enough. Owen was dismissed for directing off-clock work, misreporting the staffing model, and terminating Daniel while the complaint was under review. Grace told him in private. She did not erase the years he had helped the Hawthorne Room survive. She also did not let those years purchase one more decision. The larger investment proposal did not survive. Kuroda Hospitality offered a smaller agreement built around 5 nights of full service, 2 shorter evenings, outside payroll oversight, and a 6-month worker retention review. Grace accepted after showing the terms to the staff in plain English. Daniel received the wages the review found he was owed and an offer to return. The offer did not contain a management title. He accepted. The return did not repair every cost. The restaurant now closed earlier twice a week. A server lost late tips. Grace reduced her own draw, and Kuroda's company postponed the hotel dining room renovation until the new numbers held for 6 months. At the staff meeting, Grace did not call the result a victory. This is the operation we can pay for, she said. If the work changes, the hours change with it. If I cannot afford the hours, I will change the service before I ask someone to donate them. Daniel sat in the back beside the dishroom door. Afterward, Grace handed him a clean apron. I could create a guest services title, she said. Do you need one? Not yet. Then don't create work to make an apology look larger. Grace smiled faintly. You make it difficult to do something generous. Paying the hours is generous enough. Tessa withdrew from Owen's private lead cook arrangement. When Grace opened the position through a formal process, Tessa applied again. You know I might not get it, she told Daniel. I know. You're not going to argue with the committee? Only if they ask me about the dishes. She laughed before she could stop herself. Daniel also enrolled in an evening community interpreter course. Mr. Kuroda's temporary contract had gone to someone else, exactly as he had warned. Daniel was disappointed, and the disappointment did not destroy him. On the first Tuesday under the new schedule, the last order left the kitchen at 9. The fryer cooled. The final glasses completed their cycle. The porter reached the loading dock before it locked. At 10:15, Tessa checked the sanitation list. All done. Daniel placed the yellow duplicate in the new payroll box. Then we clock out. They stood at the time clock together. Tessa pressed her number, then waited while Daniel pressed his. No work remained behind them. Daniel returned to the dish room for his jacket. Above the clean plates, the paper crane stood on the dry rack. Its repaired wing still carried the crease from the night he had crushed it. He did not smooth it again. Daniel turned off the light and he and Tessa left the kitchen together.